G'day, my name's Alex Dudley, and I'd just like to introduce you to my channel. It's going to be, I don't know what I'm going to call it, possibly Bush Philosopher, possibly Alex Dudley Naturalist, I don't know. But whatever it's about, I hope that I can bring you a few takes on a variety of different topics of interest. Now, I'll start off just by introducing who I am. So I'm a professional ecologist, and for me that involves going out into the field and doing wildlife surveys, looking for animals. I go out into the environment and try to work out what species of creatures actually live there. This comes from a childhood passion for animals that has developed into a career. It's not the only thing I've ever done. So after I left school at 16, which I don't advise anyone else to do, by the way, I worked in clerical jobs around Sydney for a while before moving to Tasmania to chase a girlfriend at the time. And then starting uni, and I discovered that I was a terrible student. It shouldn't have been a surprise. I was a terrible student at school as well. Turns out I have ADD, something I only discovered very late in life, a few years ago, but that explains a lot. And during the course of my career, I haven't only done wildlife surveys in Tasmania, New South Wales, Queensland, the Northern Territory and the Kimberley. I've actually also worked as a tour guide, and I worked as a tour guide in Tasmania, I worked as a tour guide in Central Australia, and I worked as a tour guide in the top end as well. And I also worked as a discovery ranger in Tasmania for about 25 summers. So I have a lot of experience as a discovery ranger. And I also worked as an interpretation ranger in Kakadu for about 7 summers there as well. So as an interpretation ranger in Kakadu, I was actually employed by the Aboriginal Board of Management of Kakadu to interpret Aboriginal culture, and I was very thoroughly trained. For every 5 months of work I did up there, I got a month's intensive training in culture, and I did that for 7 seasons. So that's like 7 months of intensive culture training in the top end. I was also I've always been very interested in Aboriginal cultures in Australia, and my work as a guide at Uluru also involved a lot of sitting down with Pinchitjara and Yankunytjatjara people and talking to them about culture. So I come from a systems background, and I'm interested in ecological systems. I'm interested in life. I'm interested in cultures. I'm interested in what is culture. I'm interested in questions about culture. I'm interested in all those things. So if you think you might have seen me somewhere, you might have come to one of my talks in Tasmania or Kakadu, you might have come on a tour with me, or you might have seen me on Australian Story with my wife Jane. And we were on Australian Story, I think, in August 2025, and the episode was called Gut Instinct. And the reason we were on Australian Story is because we cured Jane's bipolar disorder. And saying cure and bipolar disorder in the same sentence is going to trigger a few people, I think. But firstly, what I want to do is say I am not involved in the wellness industry at all. I do not like the wellness industry. I guess I stop the clocks right twice a day, so there's probably some things in there that are probably actually helpful to people. But it's actually, in terms of economics, as big as a grift as, big pharma or whatever conspiracy you want to throw out there. I believe in science. I believe in pursuing science. I believe in the scientific method. I believe in testing a hypothesis. I do not believe that causality is, is the be all. Like there's a lot of things going on. I'm going to have to edit this out. So correlation is not causality necessarily. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But, you know, I stand by my claim that I cured my wife's bipolar disorder, and we did this through fecal micro... I stand by my claim that I cured my wife's bipolar disorder, and we did this through fecal microbiome transplants. Now, we were the first people in the world, as far as we can tell, to use fecal transplants for a mental health condition. And to give you a bit of a background, in case you haven't seen the Australian story, and I will leave a link to that story in the show notes, I guess you call it. The way that I came about this bizarre cure using poo transplants to cure my wife's mental illness is out of desperation. So my wife had treatment-resistant bipolar disorder. She was on 3 medications that helped. I do not advise anyone to go off their meds without talking at length with their psychiatrists and being monitored. But she was very, very ill. She had very, very severe depression most of the time, and occasionally something had happened and she would spiral off into psychosis. And she visited hospitals quite a number of times for psychosis or suicidal depression. And she was actually on the disability support pension, and I was essentially her carer. It actually took me quite a while to realise how sick she was and how unwell and how much she was suffering, because she was good at masking, as a lot of people with bipolar disorder are. But once I realised how unwell she was and what hell she was living in, I knew that this wasn't a sustainable disease and that she would eventually probably take her own life, and that is not something I wanted to happen. I'm just going to pause this here